GW is always so good at making me both love and hate them. For those of you that don't know, and those of you that do, I know I'm a little behind the time, I'm sorry. GW has released a new faction rulebook or battle tome for the Cities of Sigmar faction, the current fantasy setting that they have. Normally this isn't a big deal beyond a faction getting buffed or nerfed or something, but in this case it's a small rework that leaves me quite upset and potentially worried for the future lore. So for those of you who don't focus on the cities of Sigmar because they just weren't your faction or something, there are a series of cities throughout the setting manned by not just humans, but dwarves and elves as well. They'd have their own specialty roles in the cities, such as masonry and engineering for the dwarves. Dark elves would be seen as smugglers and sailors, among darker things, I'm sure. And as Warhammer is a game meant for war, they'd also work in their specific roles on the battlefield, with dwarves being these big, slow-moving walls of metal that were just difficult to displace, but not great at dealing damage. Dark elves were fast, squishy damage dealers, and humans would kind of fill the gap in between them. So from a wargame or an RPG standpoint, it made the faction feel more filled out and just more fun to blend together. Well, now that will no longer be the case, as the Mountain Hole Dwarves and the Dark Elves are going to be unsupported once this edition ends, being replaced with a different army option that lets you build your Cities of Sigmar list with the setting's High Elves and Slayer Dwarves from other factions. That's not too bad, and I'll get to it in a minute, but we're focusing on the Dwarves and Elves that are getting kicked out right now. Now, to clarify, the Dwarves and Dark Elves were like holdovers from the previous fantasy setting. But after 10 years of having them in the setting, writing books about them, giving them full reign to control cities in the realms like Olgu, or having dwarves assist in creations such as the Cogforts that they just released models of, you'd think they'd at least model some dwarves manning cannons or working in/on the Cogforts, or having dark elves. I don't know, look, this is mainly about the dwarves, but they both give more fun to the setting by having them mixed in with the humans, and when they don't have things on the tabletop, GW tends to forget they exist in lore. I get the rules for the Cities of Sigmar were definitely rough at the beginning of the new edition, with it feeling like they were held together with 40k inspired band-aids. And while the new stuff does look really good with a new army build that allows you to bring the Greek fantasy elves of the Lumineth with the vertically challenged nudists of the Fire Slayers, I am just worried of how this is going to affect the overall feel of a setting where it already feels like they only care about what's happening on one battle map, to the point that they remake a whole model lineup to visibly match what is basically one small group within the faction. I could go into detail on that part in the future, but yeah, for 40k fans, just think Cadians versus Steel Legion or whatever your favorite's underrepresented Miltarm subfaction is. It's like they do something good with one hand and then they do something that leaves me worried or questioning my stability in this game franchise with the other. And no, this has nothing to do with the fact I just finished making a dwarf army that was swappable for both Old World and AOS. Shut up.